Hi guys, how are you doing? My name is Toto and I'm here with Joysticks, and today we're going to talk about the lore's 5 alternative win conditions.
These are cards that have either I win the game text in them, or they bring an alternative win condition, such as Mew, for example, for your games.
So the first one is Fiora. Fiora is a very old card. I think she's from the Primordial set, and she was one of the most strongest cards in those era in the meta 3 years ago.
She didn't have any actual answers because back then we didn't have as many removals as we have now, and there were no silences in the game. The most you could do was return it to the hand or vengeance it, and with tools such as the knife, for instance, it became very hard to do so.
So Fiora win condition is when she is level 2, when I've killed 4 enemies and survived, you win the game. So she must strike 4 enemies and kill them for you to win the game.
It transfers over from the level 1, by the way. So if you killed 2 enemies at her level 1, you only need to kill 2 other enemies with her at her level 2. But at her level 2, she gets 1 extra health, 1 extra attack point. So it becomes easier to kill with her. Nowadays, she plays differently. She doesn't play with Ionia anymore. She plays with Shurima, sometimes Freljord. But she has been a very popular champion for a while now.
Yeah, she doesn't really play in the standard format because she's rotated. She only is available in the Eternal. And the Eternal, she plays in a rogue deck. It's not really meta, but it's very good to play against Aziridelia. So if you want to target those Aziridelia decks in the Eternal format, I think Fiora is one of the best options.
Right, so let's see the next one, which is Starspring, the famous Soraka Tamkench archetype. Starspring is a card that says round end, heal damage allies 1, then once I've seen you heal 22 plus damage from allies, win the game.
This card was very strong in the Soraka Tamkench archetype when those champions came into the game. After a lot of nerfs and after a lot of time, those were very nerfed. Those archetypes were very nerfed, and by this day it doesn't really fit into any kind of archetype in the game.
Back then, we used to have a lot of Tamkench Soraka mirrors, and they would be defined by whoever had Tamkench on 4 with the attack token. So it was a very dark time for Legends of Runeterra, but nowadays I would consider Starspring pretty harmless, as it has been nerfed, and nowadays I think its condition is very hard to achieve.
This card was considered one of the most toxic cards in the game 2 years ago. To this day, this doesn't happen. It's just a very weak card that actually is the weakest alternative win condition in the game that we have right now.
So let's see the next one, which is the Bandal Tree, which recently got a nerf. Buff.
A buff. Bandal Tree right now is 3 mana. It was 4 mana, but the first version of this card was actually 6 mana or 5 mana.
I don't know. I know that the effect has changed a lot. Back then, it didn't need to see the regions you played. So if you had to play 10 regions throughout the game, you could just drop the Bandal Tree and it would already count up to 10. Nowadays, this landmark needs to see you playing each card. And counts only the units that are on board. So for instance, if you have a board with 4 units that are all 4 different regions, you will drop this landmark and then it will count to 4. And then later on, for each other region that you play, it will count up. But back then you didn't need to do any of that. You just played your multi-region units, and then once you got this landmark, you would just play it from your hand, and it was very difficult to deal with.
So the alternative win condition of this card is round start, create a follower from a new region in hand, then if I send allies from 10 regions, win the game. This card right now, it's very popular and very strong in the Eternal format. A lot of decks that are very competitive in tournaments are playing this card, and it's back from the old days now. I think this card was one of the best in the first meta of the World's Championship, and right now it's coming back actually for the competitive format.
This card actually adds another win condition for your multi-region decks, because your multi-region decks can already stand on their own, which was the issue with this archetype back then too. You would get hit very heavily from these multi-region units, which back then included Poppy, which was one of the best units in the game. And to this day, you still need to handle the pressure that is put from these multi-region units, and then you have to deal with this extra win con, which is the Bandal Tree, which can very much give them the win if you don't have landmark removal.
So the next one is Rise, and Rise is definitely one of the most popular alternative win condition cards in the game. Rise was also very strong, very popular when it came to the game, and it doesn't really got nerfed actually. The nerf that Rise got was the rotation. All the cards from the original Rise deck were rotated, and the champion really don't have any cards to play in his deck right now in the standard format.
But in Eternal, he's definitely a powerhouse to be careful with. The only thing that stops him from being too strong in Eternal is the speed that Eternal has for aggressive decks, which currently keep him out of the format. So every time you think, oh, I hate aggro decks, you need to thank them, as they are keeping Rise from your ranked matches.
So the alternative win condition from Rise is: when I'm summoned or around start, create 2 Delve into the Past in your deck. Delve into the Past is a card that costs 2. It's a burst speed spell that creates you a landmark, and when Rise have the 5 landmarks, distinct landmarks in play, when he attacks, activate all your world runes. If you have 5 unique world runes, that's the landmark. Destroy the enemy nexus, and everything in his attack is burst speed, so you actually win the game with burst speed.
Yeah, but you need to have all 5 landmarks in play, the 5 world runes that you create with Rise's spells that he puts in your deck. And additionally, he is a region of his own, so you can only bring one other region with him, and his region says that you can put any burst spells in your deck at the time of deck building. So people used to play it, they still play it actually, with Ionia. Some people tried it with Guild of Renzal, some people tried it with Shurima. So you pair his region, which contains all the burst spells, with these other regions to try and keep the game alive until you can play all 5 runes and then attack with him and win the game on the spot.
So the last one is not a card, but a bunch of cards that can do the deck out win condition. When your opponent has 0 cards in his deck and he tries to draw a card, he automatically loses the game.
Yeah, so we have a couple of cards that can help you get this effect. The most, I think, standard and common and usual of them all nowadays is Maokai in the Deep archetype. Maokai, when he levels up, obliterate the enemy deck, leaving 4 non-champions. So it's gonna leave still 4 cards in your opponent's deck, but you can pair it with this card, which is Watery Grave, which obliterates 6 cards from the bottom of the enemy's deck. So you level Maokai up, then play Watery Grave, and you get to mill your opponent. Of course, this doesn't stop them from adding more cards to their deck, with a card such as Gohard, for instance, which puts copies of itself in the deck, or other various cards that have the same effect. But it's still something that can happen, I guess.
Historically, the strongest card that we have that pretty much destroy your opponent's entire deck was Watcher, but it was very recently nerfed, I think.
Yeah, Watcher was a card that used to obliterate every single card in your opponent's deck, so it left 0 cards in their deck, which by then the only counterplay was, like I said, putting extra cards in your deck, such as a copy of another champion, or cards such as Go Hard, or even a cat, which places a Hexa Crystal in your deck. So these options were available to you. But at the same time, Watcher was deemed too strong in the Lissandra Trundle archetype, which could place him on board 4 times with Fading Memories. So it was actually nerfed. Nowadays it says it obliterates up to 3 cards in your opponent's deck. And this is not good at all, because Watcher is a very difficult win condition to reach, unlike Maokai, which is in a deck that you basically is already working towards his level up throughout the match. Watcher instead needs you to play, Lissandra needs her to level up by playing 2 other 8 cost units, and then you need to play other 8 cost units, used to be 4 as well, to actually be able to play Watcher. So it's a lot of steps to in the end not even obliterate their whole deck. So this was one of my favorite archetypes, and you couldn't even play it on ranked because Azirelia counters this archetype. And yeah, I couldn't even play it competitively because I didn't play competitive then, so I really wish this archetype got reverted so I could play it again in some type of play.
Yeah, that's very a bummer. Watcher was one of the coolest cards in the game back then. Right now it's so much nerfed that it's very weak, and we don't have a lot of deck count conditions in the game, despite Maokai. That's his play in the standard and the Eternal as well. So guys, that was it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe, and I see you guys in the next.